Is this something to brag about? Welcome to the Four Seasons. I'm your host, Ken Johnson. Today, we're going to be doing our Hydra Bragg. This is the last of the series, so stick around and see how this Braggot turns out. For this Hydra Bragg, first thing I'm doing is bringing a pot of water to a boil. This is roughly a half gallon. So we'll see this in just a minute. It's coming up to about a boil now. It's getting nice and hot. I'll take some of this water out. You'll see me put that into a different container. And then we'll take the rest of this and do something with it. Okay, I just removed not quite a quart of water off of that while the other is boiling. And I've got this Gallberry honey here. I'm going to put in a pound of Gallberry honey. The water is boiling. Now the next thing I've done is turned off the water. I've got McCormick peppercorn medley grinder. I've said this before, but it is black peppercorns, coriander, pink peppercorns, white peppercorns, and green peppercorns. This is an ounce of hyssop. This is an ounce of mugwort. And then I've got some orange peel. So mugwort's kind of interesting. This is a true braggot. You'll see a lot of YouTubers that they will put hops in their what they think is a braggot, but what they're doing is making a beer. Anytime you put hops into a brew, you're making a beer. That's the legal definition. If you take malt, that's a grain sugar. You take malt and you take yeast, water, and hops, you have made a beer. It's just a honey beer, but you have made a beer. You've not made a braggot. So mugwort, the reason why it's called mugwort, this was the primary flavoring used back in the day, as was hyssop and a few other herbs. So the main flavorings that's in beer came from braggots. So I'm going to put in an ounce of mugwort. That's going to be my bittering agent. Then I'm going to put in a half ounce roughly of the hyssop. I'll put in a few pieces of orange peel, and then I'll put in about a tablespoon of this black pepper mixture. You'll see that in a minute. Mugwort's in. Hyssop is going in. Orange peel is going in right now. Now the peppercorn medley is going in. That's a tablespoon of that. Now we're just going to stir well, incorporate all this, and let this steep for a little while. You could have it boiling, but I see no need in doing all that. And so we're just going to let this steep. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to let this boil for about 15 minutes. It needs to have a good boil on it to get some of the flavors out that I wouldn't get from steeping. So I changed my mind on that. I've been waffling back and forth, and I've made an executive decision. While that's boiling, all I'm doing is stirring in my honey water. We'll get that all, done like it's supposed to be done. And that'll actually be coming to temp pretty soon. Alright, next we're going to put in 8 ounces of dry malt extract. This is Bavarian wheat, so that'll be fun. In goes the dried malt extract. Now, this is going to be the fun part, getting this stirred up, getting it. It's a gummy mess. It's even worse than dealing with whey powder. It's just a gummy, sticky mess. But what I was going to say is that the dry malt extract is a lot easier to deal with than having to do all the spurging and all that nonsense that you normally have to do with regular beer production. I mean, I can take my electric immersion blender and whip this up in no time, which I might do, although it's trying to dilute itself. I just gotta stir. I'm very impatient with this stuff. But anyway, it's just a lot easier, and you get a pretty decent product. I mean, you really have to be working your butt off to outdo a powder and what it can do for you. Just make sure you have hot water, but not boiling hot water, and just stir it in. Now, it's always amazed me that our ancestors need to get sugar from grain. That has never ceased to amaze me. And beer, if you listen to historians, beer originated in Egypt. But that isn't quite true. We know for a fact that the Aztecs had beer. What they would do is they would take corn and sprout it and basically malt corn. So the idea of malting has been around, and see, they got it from others, so it's been around in the Americas for a long time. So it's actually more universal than it is identifiable just with Egypt. It's just that history is told from a European standpoint, and most of Europe is now Judeo-Christian in their culture. Not saying that you believe in Judeo-Christian values. I'm just saying your culture is from a country that has laws and policies and beliefs based upon Judeo-Christian values. And so with that, the history of the Jews and the Hebrews going all the way into Egypt, that is told as being fact rather than the combined world history of everybody that is not Judeo-Christian. So most of your adult life will be spent unlearning what you learned in either private school or public school, especially public school, but definitely private school as well. That you'll be unlearning and trying to get to the real truth, if you care at all. Some people just don't care. But if you're somebody like me that you care about facts and the truth, you'll learn these little tidbits along the way, and I try to share them just to let you know, this isn't true. So Aztecs definitely had it. There's other tribes before the Aztecs that they picked it up from. So actually making beer or beer-like substances. Now we're doing a Braggot in a hydromel form, but yeah, this is universal. Told you got impatient and used my immersion blender. Worked so much better. Okay, now I'm going to transfer this liquid over into the fermenter. Okay, so I've actually had to add water along the way into this, and I've got just a small amount of my water left. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run this through a sieve, and a funnel. I'll show you that. So this is nothing more than a reusable coffee filter that I've got over a funnel, and I'm just going to spoon this in, and it's going to strain out my solids. And you can see I've got just a little bit of my wort here that I'm doing, and then the rest is foam. According to Dr. Hans, Dr. Hans has a brewing channel on YouTube, and I'm going to defer to the doctor because he makes beer more than I do. He says that if you use a wheat-based malt, you'll have more head form when you're making beers and stuff like that. So this is a Braggot, the great-grandfather of beer. So what I'm going to do is, I know I'm going to have a lot of head, evidently, from this wheat. So I'm going to leave a little bit of head space between the brewing agent and the malt water. I've got a wort that's roughly about, not quite a half gallon, maybe a third of a gallon. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put a cap on this, and we're going to let it sit until it gets blood temp. In case you don't know what blood temp is, that means anywhere from 98 degrees to 104 degrees. So that's what they consider blood temp. Anything around 120 will kill yeast. I don't want to do that. So we're going to let this cool down. I'll put a cap on it. I'll put it in the freezer and let it get nice and cool. And then we'll do the next step. Something else I wanted to say before I cap this and put it away. In mystic herbalism, a lot of the herbs that we put in here and that we use traditionally for brewing beers and braggots, they also had a metaphysical purpose. So for instance, mugwort that's in here, that was used for dreams and also enhancing psychic abilities. And a lot, your black pepper, that was used for protection and to protect you from dark forces and things of that nature. So a lot of these brewing herbs that we put in beers and things of that nature had, or at least the old ones had, a metaphysical side to it. And if you ever study metaphysical herbology, you'll learn that our ancestors had other purposes for beers and braggots than what you think. It's amazing how a little time in a freezer will change everything. It'll cool down your brews. It'll make bothersome people more compliant. What? I mean, never mind. Roughly about an hour is in the freezer is all this needed to kind of cool down. Now we'll add in roughly about a half gallon of our hydromel base. Okay, so you can't really see that well the markings on the hydrometer, but it is 1.060. Now you have to remember that we're going to have some non-fermentable sugars. So this will not finish out at 1.000. This means that we're pushing about an 8% alcohol once we account for the non-fermentable sugars plus the alcohol that's already in the half gallon of Braggot, or half gallon of hydromel. So figuring all that in, close to 8% alcohol, which is now past the strong beer stage, definitely at the upper limits of a hard cider, going into the wine stage. So this is going to be a pretty potent drink. Now I've tasted a little bit of the wort. It is strong. I mean, the flavor is strong. It's going to have bitter notes. It's going to have all that. Now, I'm super sensitive to bitter. So, I would say if you're like me and you're super sensitive to bitter, take and do anywhere from a half to a quarter of what I did in this recipe and reduce it down. You could up the orange a little bit. The orange would be fine, but mainly your bittering agents will be the hyssop and most importantly the mugwort. Those are the two ingredients I'm talking about. You need to either half or quarter if you're one that doesn't like a bitter drink. So the other thing, this is a malt from wheat. As I said before, Dr. Hans with Dr. Hans Brewing or Brewery, whatever his channel is, I'll put it down below in the link. Go check him out for brewing advice on beers. He's really good with that. But he says numerous times that you'll get more foam from wheat malt. So I'm expecting a very active fermentation, so be very careful with that. We're going to let this sit. It'll probably brew out in about 10 days to 14 days, more or less. It may take a little longer because of the alcohol content, or sugar content, sorry, that is in this. The yeast will be trying to ferment all that out. I'll show how to do all that. I'll probably try a clarifying process that Dr. Hans recommends. So I'll show you that. I don't know yet. It'll depend on how clear this is. But if it's not clear, Dr. Hans uses gelatin. So I may do that. We'll find out once this is done how good it clears out, and then we'll go to the next step. See you then. Ha ha ha, just kidding. I forgot the most important thing. I had to put on the airlock, and I wanted to show you that. I always use a balloon. That's my airlock of choice. I'm using rubber bands now. I used to use string, but you can use anything to affix the balloon to the cap. I just put 2 holes, or 4 holes in the tip, so I'll run the toothpick one way and then run it the other way. So that's done. And now, also, I probably didn't say it, but I wanted to let you know everything that I've used in this video has been sanitized in a solution of 30% bleach water. That's my sanitizer of choice. You can use Star San or One Step. I have used One Step in the past. The problem with it, you have to let it sit a minimum of 9 to 10 minutes for it to be effective. Most people you see on YouTube, they just stick it in the water, take it out. That does nothing. Your wet time matters. And if you use the 30% bleach solution, you can just put it in there and let it sit for about 2 to 3 minutes. That is sufficient to kill anything. Whereas if you use Star San or One Step, you need to let it sit for about 10 minutes, sometimes as much as 15 minutes, depending upon what the guidelines are. So I use bleach solution always, and then rinse it off really good about 2 or 3 times just to make sure you get all the bleach off. That it just makes sure that you killed everything. Now we're going to let this sit for about 2 weeks or so. So I am trying a new product today. I've never used Sparkaloid. My normal fining agents are cold. That's my go-to. Cold will normally fix 90% of your problems. You don't need a fining agent. If there is a like a fruit groot, some people say adjunct, that you've added, pectin normally works. and that works about 90-something% of the time. If you got a non-fruit groot adjunct, then gelatin will work with varying degrees of success. Somebody has told me to try Sparkaloid. So if you read the instructions on here, it says that you take 1 cup of boiling water, and it says, it's weird, it says boiling water for 5 minutes, so I guess that's just to make sure that everything is good. And then you add, dissolve 1 tablespoon into 1 cup of boiling water and let it sit for 5 minutes. I can't read this morning. Anyway, and then that does 6 US gallons. And you have to wait a week. I don't like it. And it's basically using dirt and a flocculating agent. I have a problem with it, even though I know it's food grade, I know it's fine, I know it's safe. But I've been told this is fantastic and I really need to give it a shot. And so in the interest of being fair and open-minded, I've got 2 brews today. Both of them are cloudy. And I'm needing to get this done so I can finish out this mead series. And so that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to show you how I do this. And so I've already got a cup of cold water right here. And I'm going to put it in the microwave and get it boiling hot. And then I'm going to add in 1 tablespoon. I'll divide out the water so that I've got equal amounts. And then I'll add half to one brew and half to the other. So stick around. Okay, now we're just adding this into the boiling hot water. And trust me, I burnt myself. And you can see it's already reacting. That stuff is going to town. So we're just going to stir this up now, and I'll show you when I'm done. This is the Hydra Bragg. It's actually fairly clear. It's got some cloudiness, so I'm going to go ahead and add this in now. Oh, we got some clumpage. That's not good. Didn't do this very well. Ugh. I'll be honest, with the Sparkaloid, I am not happy with how it cakes and clumps when you add hot water. It took forever to get the rest of that dissolved in, and I had to separate between 2 brews. It was a nightmare. But now we're going to put the airlock back on this, and we'll let this sit for a week. See how it goes. Just a couple hours later, and this is what seaweed and fossilized earth looks like. That's where I dripped the mud. That's just mud, dirt on the outside. And yes, that's dirt. That is what diatomaceous earth is. It's dirt. It's fossilized dirt. So you can see where it's starting to get all these particulates out of solution. Eventually all this will fall down, and when what we call flocculating, and once it flocculates out, this will be a clear beverage. So interesting. Okay, so 5 days later, this is our Hydra Bragg. You see this fluffy stuff, and then there's fluffy stuff. But what's hard to see is through here, there's bits of fluffy stuff suspended. So I'm going to try something. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to try to cold rack this. And so I'm going to put this in a refrigerator and let this sit for a few days and see if this will clear out some. Well, it looks like there was some missing files and I can't retrieve them. I don't know what happened, but they're gone. Suffice it to say, I used allulose. I used roughly about 1.5 cups of allulose, added 2 cups of water. I did nothing else, and then I bottled it. That was on the 27th. It was crystal clear, and I did add carbonation tablets, and I did add a half tablespoon of sugar. That's it. So I don't know what happened, but it's missing, so I apologize for that. Well, I hope you enjoyed that part of the video, and now let's give this a taste. As you saw, I did a long pour and it got a lot of head on it, so it's definitely effervescent. Let's first sniff and see how it smells. The reason why we do that, smell is the quickest way to the brain. That's how we perceive taste first. Got some good notes reminiscent of what you would think of as a beer. So by that I mean it's got some herbal notes that are kind of astringent, bitter, but then there's some sweetness and some yeastiness, and then that little bit of there's a certain smell to carbon dioxide, and it's almost acid-like to the nose, and that's what you smell. So let's give it a taste. Oh wow. It's a little bitter, but you expect that. But it's balanced with sweetness. There's a little bit of maltiness coming in. I believe that's from the allulose. I mean, we use malt, so of course or malt extract, so you're going to have that, but I mean, there's a certain taste that I get from allulose, and that's what it tastes like to me. But it's not like distracting from it. It's really good. I would dial down the herbs a little bit. Probably the hyssop. I think I put hyssop in this. I would dial it back down just a little bit. I think half the herbs I used would have been ideal, because there is a bitter note. I don't care for bitter. There's a lot of people who love bitter beers. If you love bitter beers, this will be a 10 in your book. Trust me. You might even want it more bitter. I don't like regular beers because they're too bitter. I'm not a beer drinker because of the bitterness. But this one is drinkable as far as bitterness. It's just not as sweet as I'd like. It's a little bit more bitter than I'd like, but still not undrinkable. Wow. It's thick, it's creamy. It's got that effervescence. It's got that bitterness. This is awesome. Man, if I gave this to you and you didn't know better, you would think it was a beer, which there's a reason why Braggots are the great grandfather of beer, beers and ales. Man, that is really, really good. So what's my scale that I'm going to use to grade this? Well, on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being I can't change it, it's too perfect, it's just as good as it'll ever be. 1 being, yeah, I'm gonna throw this away. I can't drink this. It's not good. Probably toxic. 5 being, I'll drink it if there's nothing else around that's better. I'm putting this at a 9. So why didn't I give it a 10? Simply put, it needs half the amount of herbs. If I put half the amount of herbs, this will be a 10. So next time I do this, I'll put in half the amount of herbs and I'll have a 10 on my hands. You really, really need to try this. Oh my goodness. This is too good. Really. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. Thank you if you've watched the series all the way through to now. If you haven't, I've got a playlist. Go back and check out all the different hydromels in this series because they're a great study into how to make meads. And I think that they'll teach you more about flavors and processes and give you more room to experiment than just about any other process of mead making I've ever seen. Hydromels, they're affordable, they're easy, they're fast. I would say start with hydromels if you're starting out and make this braggot as part of your studies in this. Dial back the herbs by half, maybe even a quarter. You could go back to a quarter and it would probably be perfect. Of course, if you like bitter, then keep it the way it is. I don't like hops. And again, I did not use hops in this because if the minute you put hops in, it is no longer a mead. It is a beer. Understand that. If you put hops in a mead with malt as part of the fermentable sugars, you've made a beer. So, if you hadn't already, give this video a like. I'm sure if you're watching to now, obviously, you have subscribed. If not, why haven't you? Go ahead and subscribe. Hit that notification bell and I'll see you again next time. Bye.